Hi, it's Andy again, and another video for you. Yesterday, I talked about the idea of being authentic as people. And as people, what we often do is we try to masquerade ourselves. And one of the things I didn't share yesterday, but this is so clearly evident in the way we go about our lives by the questions we ask, and more specifically, by the responses that we give. For instance, um, you go up to somebody and say, "How are you?" But you keep walking, right? Just hoping that they will say, "I'm doing fine," expecting that they will say, "doing fine." Because if they happen to say, "Wow, things are bad, things are challenging," like, "I wish I hadn't asked," then don't ask. I mean, where's the authenticity in that, right? But we all do it. It's these games that we play to be nice, but not really being nice, not being kind. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But we put on these masks. We dress up certain ways. We make our hair different ways. I don't do much with my hair, obviously, but there's just all these little games that we play. And so, yeah, again, this whole series, these first 4 days of this week are talking about some of the reflections I had in walking around, praying as we walk past different houses and stuff, praying over the families and the people within each of those houses, represented by each of those houses, this past weekend here in Fairfax. And so, um, as we did that, I saw lots of lawn ornaments and people out working and fixing their cars, polishing their cars. Nothing wrong with any of that. But the challenge becomes when we use those things to portray an image that's not really us. So I want to transition today from authentic people to authentic love. And the reason I want to talk about authentic love is because we do have an authentic God. God does not lie. God is pure. He is perfect. And it is because of that certainty, because of that purposefulness that God has in always being who He is 100% of the time, that we can count on Him, that we can count on that love. Now, uh, I talked last week about the Great Commandment, so I don't want to go down that path again. But that path does lend to authentic love, because our response to the love that God has is to love God and to love neighbors as we love ourselves. And of course, First John 4 says that God is love. But notice it does not say love is God. Love is represented different ways by different people, but one way that we can think of God is love. And so, again, many people will know of the New Testament words for that, like agape and phileo and such. But I want to look at the Old Testament word for loving kindness, because as we think about authenticity, as we think about love, one of the things that we need to think about is the action of love. And God certainly has been active in his love since time has been recorded and will be until time ends. And that's just from our perspective, right? I mean, God, if God is love, that love precedes creation, it's eternity past. It will continue on eternally into the future as well. But that Old Testament word for that is hesed, and transliterated as Hesed. And I know I didn't get the in there for any Hebrew people that are watching this, but that idea of a hesed love, it is an active love. It is an open love. It is a sacrificial love, much like agape in the New Testament. But we see this idea of hesed, or this loving kindness, throughout the Old Testament. We see it to people like Abram. We see it to people like the Israelites. We see it to in Ruth. It is a very prominent aspect of the book of Ruth, for instance. But for us, as we think about that authentic love of God, that love is to be passed through us. It is to us, but it is not ours to keep. There is something about the economy of God that multiplies when we use it. I've got a pen right here, and if I were to give this pen to you, I no longer have a pen. Or more specifically, if I were to use all the ink, it's about right here, right now. If I was to use all the ink in this pen, then eventually that I can't use the pen anymore. But in God's economy, it never runs out. We see this, with the story of the widow who is going to make one last meal for her son, and all of a sudden Elijah shows up, and they don't run out of food. Um, just a little bit of oil, a little bit of cake, a little bit of bread left. She just needed some sticks for one last meal, and it just continued to do it. That's the way God's love is. But again, it's not just for us to keep. Oh, God loves me. Okay, He does. But what are we doing with that love that He gives us? And so, one of the other observations, and I talked about this with a couple of people I was walking with this week, is we tend to um, when we first are born again, we have this incredible passion about God and perhaps about others. We want to share that story. It's like the man in John 9. He said, I don't know who the man was. I was blind, but now I see. And so all he wanted to do was tell other people about this man who had healed him. And we have that passion, we have that burning within us about God and without others. But sometimes for many people over time, the that passion fades or it ebbs and flows perhaps. And so, there are things that we know we should do, things that we know we can do, but we just don't. And so one of the things that we tend to do as people is we tend to want to be nice. And there's nothing wrong with being nice. We tell our kids when they're going over, be nice. They're going to play with somebody or they're going over to an aunt or uncles or grandparents or whomever might be nice. What nice means is don't do anything. I mean, really, that's what it means. It's be nice is a passive idea. Don't get yourself into trouble. And many people say, well, God's not fair or God's not nice. Well, I don't need a God who's nice. I need a God who is kind. And the difference between being nice and being kind is that kindness is active. And that's where that word hesed comes into play, that loving kindness. There is an active God that shows his love, that shares his love, and expects us then to share that love. And so, again, as we're walking around town this weekend, one of the things that I talk with a few people is even when we don't think it, and even when we can't see it at times, God loves every person in every house, no matter whether they have a mask on, no matter whether they are just open and as real and as authentic as can be. God loves each person. Whether the outside of their home is falling apart, whether the grass hasn't been mowed, or whether everything is absolutely immaculate. And again, we tend to look at the exterior. We hear from a young age, don't judge a book by its cover. And we say that with the idea of be nice. But we could go beyond niceness to being kind because that's what that kind of love that God has for us will do. It will move us from maybe even being not an inauthentic person to having an authentic love like God's love because of his authenticity as a person, as the triune God. And so therefore we show that kindness, we show that love, that sacrificial love. And of course there was no better expression of that kind of love, of that kind of kindness than the death of Jesus. And so as we think about the fact maybe that we aren't as authentic as we could be or as we should be, we have to realize that God loves us even in the midst of that. And when we look at that neighbor, and when we look at our friends, even when we look at those church people that we might walk past and say, hi, how are you doing this morning, hoping they don't really give us an honest answer, maybe we should be kind and take the time to really mean what we're asking, to really mean that we care. We can do that for those in our neighborhood. We can do that for those in our circles all around us, whether that's at work, whether that's at play, whatever. Eventually, we will all get back together again, and maybe for a while we will put on a face, and we will say, everything was fine, everything was good. So be nice to me. but maybe during this time we can learn to go beyond being nice and to actually be kind, to become more authentic ourselves so that we can help others do the same. So if we're going to be authentic as people, we follow an authentic God. Maybe we should look at the authenticity of his love, that authentic love that he has given to us, that he wants us to share with others. I'll continue with a couple more reflections the next couple of days, and then a little different of a treat on Friday. At least I hope it's a treat. But anyway, so until tomorrow, I bid you farewell. So farewell. My kindness to you generated in a farewell response.